Good morning, it's Monday and welcome to Penn Vicarage. Hope you're well and cheerful today. Lovely to see you and glad you could join us this morning. Before we do our reading, I'm going to ask for some prayers, please. A very dear friend of mine called Stephen Nabarro is going to become the Bishop of West Malaysia today. Lovely man, godly man. When I was in Malaysia on sabbatical a few years ago, he and his wife Anne were absolutely lovely with me. Lovely, wonderful, holy, godly people. So do please pray, I'd say a prayer today for Stephen as he becomes Bishop of West Malaysia. And God bless the Diocese of West Malaysia. And my friends, anyone watching this morning, good morning and God bless you today. Now, our reading, we are working our way through 1 Corinthians and we've now reached chapter 12. So without further ado, I'm going to read you the first 11 verses of 1 Corinthians chapter 12. Now, concerning spiritual gifts, brothers and sisters, I do not want you to be uninformed. You know that when you were pagans, you were enticed and led astray to idols that could not speak. Therefore, I want you to understand that no one speaking by the Spirit of God ever says, "Let Jesus be cursed," and no one can say Jesus is Lord except by the Holy Spirit. Now, there are varieties of gifts, but the same Spirit. There are varieties of services, but the same Lord. And there are varieties of activities, but the same God who activates all of them in everyone. To each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. To one is given through the Spirit the utterance of wisdom, to another the utterance of knowledge, to another according to the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, to another gifts of healings by the same Spirit, to another the working of miracles, to another prophecy, to another the discernment of spirits, to another various kinds of tongues, and another the interpretation of tongues. All these are activated by one and the same Spirit, who allots to each one individually, just as the Spirit chooses. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, my friends, spirituality is big business these days. Even though we are told that fewer people are going to church these days, spirit fairs, the New Age movement, spirituality is very, very big business. And if we think it is now, it certainly was in Corinth. You've got to remember that just up the road from Corinth is this massive great temple to the Greek goddess Aphrodite. There's all involved with her. There was also all the various Roman gods and all the other gods knocking around at the time. So spirituality was and is very, very big business. And let's not forget also that we are talking about 20 years or so after the death of Jesus. So it's a very new church. So lots of people who were in the church at Corinth at the time will still have been into that type of stuff before they became Christians. So it would have been a very, very big thing to the Corinthians. And with that in mind, Paul writes in the first verse, and I have to say I'm going to have to give lots of Greek this morning to help you with this one. It says here, so with that in mind, bear in mind, spirituality is a big deal for them. What he says is, now concerning spiritual gifts, now doesn't actually have, the Greek doesn't have the word gifts in. What it really says is concerning spiritual things. Things of the Spirit, spirituality. Concerning spiritual things, Paul says, brothers and sisters, I don't want you to be uninformed. So he's saying it's a big thing, this whole spirituality, spiritual things of the Spirit and so on. It's all very big stuff, and I don't want you to be uninformed. Because he says there's good stuff and there's bad stuff knocking around. And to give a rule of thumb, he gives really as to what's good and what isn't, anything that says Jesus is Lord, anything that points towards the lordship, the kingship of Jesus, that is good. Anything that doesn't is not, basically. So that's the rule of thumb. And for us today, spiritualities and things that point to Jesus being Lord are things that come from the Spirit of God, and things that don't in quite the same way. So Jesus, the lordship of Jesus, that's the key to whether spirituality or spiritual thing is good or not, whether it points to Jesus or not. That's our rule of thumb. Now then he goes to talk about how the Spirit works in people's lives. And again, the Greek here is absolutely fascinating. Because at the beginning, he talked about spiritual things. Now, in verse 4, here is when he changes the word. He goes from pneumatikon, which uses in verse 1, which is spiritual things. He changes the word to charismata. Now, charismata is a much misunderstood and overused and misused word. But charismata it means gift. It means the same word, apparently, that modern Greeks use for birthday presents. And it means a gift. It means a present. Like someone gives you a present for your birthday, in the same way God gives us. And the word charisma comes from charis, which you get charity. It means love, and it means grace. And the important thing to remember about that is it's a love gift. It's a gift given to us in love. Boy, do we get stinged up about it sometimes, but it means a gift given in love. And the great thing is, because it's been given in love, we should receive it as a love gift from God. It also means that none of us can boast, because actually all we've got as a love gift from God. And I think that's a lovely thing. So Paul, by using different words, earlier he talked about spiritual things. Now he talks about love gift, using a different word. It comes out the same in English, unfortunately, but it's a different English. So it goes from being a spiritual thing to being a love gift. And isn't that a lovely thing? It says there are a variety of love gifts, but the same Spirit. But he goes on to talk more about that. Next he goes on to talk about there are varieties of services. Well, variety of service it means. The word is diakonos, from which we get the word deacon. It means servant. In other words, these love gifts that we have are used to serve. They're there to serve one another. They're not there for our own personal gratification, to make us look good or look impressive in church or whatever. They're there to serve God and there to serve each other. What did Jesus say? Command us to do? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbour as yourself. So there are a variety of services. But the important thing is on service. It's all about serving God and serving one another. So it's not about self-aggrandizement, not about looking good in front of your friends or at the church or whatever. It's all about serving one another. From which diakonos, which get the word deacon. It means a servant. So we have varieties of love gifts and we have varieties of ways of serving. Isn't that great? But finally, there's another word he uses, the variety of works, this comes at activities. The Greek word is energon, from which we get the word energy. And isn't that a lovely thing? It means power. It means empowerment. Energon, it means, forget the English word, energy. So our Christian faith sets us on fire. It energizes us. You know, I think many of us can say that when we became Christians in our Christian faith, we've been energized in our faith. I preached the other day about the day that Jesus turned water into wine. That certainly energized people. And I know that since I've become a Christian, I've discovered all sorts of gifts that I have. And God has blessed me. And many people would say that they've been blessed by God, that they've been energized in their lives, that their lives have been enhanced, that they've been, as it were, regifted, that they've discovered gifts and been able to do things they never thought they'd ever have. Because the Greek word here is energo, from which we get the word energy. So Paul talks here in this reading this morning about spiritual things. But I love the way that he turns it round and makes it so much better. So it starts off with a dry discussion, as I say, about spiritual things. And he tells you what's good and what isn't. But then he transforms it, because instead of spiritual things, it becomes love gifts. Isn't that lovely? He also talks about ways of serving, ways of being diakonous, ways of which we can serve one another. And he also talks about energy and ways in which our Christian life, the Holy Spirit in us, sets our hearts and lives aflame, on fire for God, energizing us to face the world and also to be God's people in the world and in the church today. So my friends, may you know God's love gifting you today. May you know and experience God's way of serving each other and serving him. And also may you know God the Holy Spirit energizing you in your life today. God bless you.